Studio 33 AD, bringing you Catholic media.
One day a young boy asked his great-grandmother why she had so many wrinkles on her hands. I'm old, she said. And he said, do you know what happens when you get old? You die, and they bury you in the ground. But before she could say anything else, he added, but that's okay, because God comes and unburies you. What more is there to say, my friends? He's just told the Easter story. It's that simple. We get buried by the circumstances of life, and God unburies us. Over and over, we ask, and God comes to the tombs of our lives and unburies us. That's Easter. That's the power and love of God. It's as true as it is simple. This truth, this Easter reality, speaks louder than the reality of our burials. Let's be honest with ourselves. Aren't there numerous ways in which we let our life get buried? Some we choose, others we don't. Sorrow and grief, death and loss, fear and anxiety, perfectionism, anger, guilt, regret, resentment, self-love, lust, the things we have done and the things we have left undone. These are the stones rolled across our lives that block our way to authentic Easter peace. Those stones mark the many ways in which we have suffered death, spiritual death. My fellow Christians, it's not enough that the tomb is empty. It's not enough to proclaim Christ is risen. It's not enough to simply believe in the resurrection. At some point, we have to move from the event of the resurrection to experiencing the resurrection. Experiencing resurrected life begins with recognizing the risen Christ among us. That's the gift of Easter. And it's also the difficulty and challenge described in today's gospel. Cleopas and his companion are telling the other disciples who are hiding out in some room filled with dread and fear and anxiety how Jesus appeared to them on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus again shows up out of nowhere, interrupting their conversation. Peace be with you, he says. They see him, they hear his voice, but they don't recognize him. They know Jesus was crucified, died, and was buried. They know dead men don't come back to life. This can only be a ghost, a spirit without a body. The tomb is open, but their minds are closed. They're unable to recognize the holiness that stands among them. They're continuing to live, think, and understand in the usual human, natural ways. They have separated spirit and matter, divinity and humanity, heaven and earth. Now, whenever we make this separation, we close our minds. We deny ourselves the resurrected life, the supernatural life for which Christ died, and we lose our sense of an ability to recognize holiness in our world, more importantly, in one another and in our very selves. With Jesus' resurrection, however, God shatters human inventions of who God is, where God's life and divinity are to be found, and how God works in our world. Resurrected life can never be comprehended, contained, or controlled by human thought or understanding. Jesus' resurrection compels each of us to step outside our usual human understandings of reality and enter into the divine reality, the supernatural reality. This new reality begins with touching and seeing flesh and bones, hands and feet and baked fish. Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have. Flesh and bones, hands and feet, and baked fish are the things of creation, the created order. Mary, a woman created by God, gave Jesus his flesh and bones and his hands and feet. She also gave him the stomach that would eat the fish God created. The very same flesh and bones, the very same hands and feet appeared to Cleopas and his companion on the road to Emmaus and then vanished from their sight, and now shows up unannounced and unexpected in their midst of their conversation with others. In last week's gospel, Jesus' hands and feet, his flesh and bones, passed right through the walls and locked doors. The resurrected life of Christ, it seems, my dear friends, is revealed in and through the created order. It is not, however, bound by the created order. Rather, the resurrected body and life of Christ unite the visible and invisible, matter and spirit, humanity and divinity. On the one hand, Jesus has a real body. On the other hand, it is not subject to the natural laws of time and space. It's not one or the other, it's both and. It's a new and different reality. Now, the degree to which we have allowed ourselves to be bound by the created order is the degree to which we are unable to see the resurrected life and holiness in this world. We bind ourselves, we bury ourselves with our fears, our sorrows and losses, our runaway thoughts and distractions, our attachments and addictions to material things, the lust, people, and let ourselves be led astray by belief in today's radical demonic ideologies contrary to God. Sometimes it's our unwillingness to allow or trust God to lead us to the truth and change us. In binding ourselves to the created order, we lose recognition of and the ability to live in the sacred. That's the very opposite of resurrected life. The resurrected life of Christ reveals that all creation and every one of us are filled with God, His holiness, His divinity, His well-ordered natural order. Nothing can bind or supersede the grace that is given us through resurrection, love, forgiveness, and life. This is, I think, one of the most difficult things for us to see, believe, and live. It is, however, the divine reality into which we are invited, not at some future time and place, but here and now. Christ longs and desires to open our minds to understand the Scriptures, to understand all that has been written, spoken, and revealed about Him in whatever form that happens and already has happened. That's what Jesus did for the disciples, and it's what He does for us too. This is not an academic or intellectual understanding. That the disciples are witnesses does not mean now they have all the answers. It means they now have the life Jesus wants to give them. They are witnesses based not on what they know, but on who they are, how they live, and their relationship with the risen Christ. Now, I don't know how this happens. I can't give you a set of instructions or a to-do list. That would probably be like giving you a set of instructions on how to fall in love. But the resurrected life is not acquired, it's received. It happens when we risk unbinding ourselves from the usual way of seeing, living, and relating. Now, this isn't a rejection of the natural order, which shows man the way to follow so as to practice the good and attain his end. For through it we know what we must do and what we must avoid. It's allowing the natural order to open to and reveal something more. That's what happened for the disciples. They saw and recognized something about Jesus, and in doing so, They saw and recognized something about themselves: holiness. Think about a time in your life when you lost track of time. I don't mean you just forgot what time it was, but that you were so awake, so present, that time passed you by. Think about a time when life seemed more real than it ever had, and you touched or tasted life in a way never before. Recall a moment when your heart opened, softened, and you knew you were somehow different. Remember that day when you sensed something new was being offered to you, possibilities that you did not create for yourself, they just opened up. Those are the moments when Christ opens our minds to understand. They are the moments of awe and wonder that leave us in sacred silence. They fill our eyes with tears. We weep not from sorrow or pain, but the water of new life. My dear friends, this has been my time here serving you at this beautiful cathedral. Truly resurrected life. In each of these moments, the one who is fully alive and risen, the Christ, is calling us to see and recognize him, to join him, and to discover our new life. This is the authentic self we long to become, the self that we are already becoming. This, my fellow Christians, this is resurrected life. This is Easter. God has unburied us. Let's not lose this moment. Let's not put this gospel text behind us. It's much too easy to come here each Sunday, listen to the gospel, hear for better or worse whatever the clergy preaches, and then return to life as usual. Don't let that happen. Your life is too important to let that happen. Carry this gospel message with you over the next week. Let it open your eyes, your heart, and your mind to the life Christ is offering you. Let it be the voice of Christ opening your mind to understand. Sit with it, pray with it, trust it. The change given by Jesus to the disciples is simply this: you are witnesses of these things. We are called to be witnesses, to testify to the work of God in this world. You may wonder how we can witness to something we haven't seen. Jesus tells us, "Blessed are those who haven't seen and yet still believe." How can we believe if we haven't seen? How can we testify to something we didn't personally witness? My friends, because others did. That which from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and touched with our hands, concerning the word of life. The life was made manifest, and we saw it, and testified to it, and proclaimed to you the eternal life which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard we proclaim also to you, so that you may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. And we are writing this that your joy may be complete. We hear in the first letter of St. John, the very first sentence. We saw him. We saw his hands and his feet. We saw him eat. We heard his offer of peace. How can we be so foolish today, my friends, and say we haven't witnessed the presence of the living Christ? Because we have. We haven't heard him say, "Peace be with you," but we've seen the power of his reconciling love and his ability to heal humanity. Although Christ may not appear in bodily form and share a meal or walk through our walls, his presence is tangible. We can see it in our St. Vincent de Paul Society. We see him in our food bank. I see him in these dedicated and reverent altar boys, the holiness that they show us each Sunday, in the 21 Daughters of Mary, in the little forgotten citizens of our Catholic Montessori school across the street, in St. Joseph's students. I see him in the presence of the servitude of your welcoming Catholic staff that serves you each and every day, who work tirelessly for you, going as far as sharing their lunch with the homeless, going as far as lifting them both spiritually and physically up out of the streets. We see him around our kitchen tables in our homes, and most importantly, here at this Eucharistic altar among all of us. Many times, the place to look for Jesus is in our need. Look for him in your pain. Look for him in the boredom of your lives. Encounter him in the middle of your sickness, nestled in the darkness of your depression, in the loneliness and anger of a divorce or a child gone astray. It's right there in the ordinary moments of life that we can experience the extraordinary gift that the risen life can give us. And when we do, we are witnesses, called to share the good news of repentance and forgiveness of sins with all the nations. You are witnesses of these things our King tells us. Tell it, live it, become the resurrected life. You are witnesses, we are witnesses, and our lives must reflect our King, who is everything. My fellow Christians, I exhort you as the angel did to the apostles. Go and take your place in the temple area, your place in this fallen world, and tell the people about this life.